Dr. Anna Maria Heltier, herbalist and microbiologist at Osada Natural Health. For this week's Monday's Mushroom, I'm going to talk about mushrooms and gout. And I'm talking about this because I have an upcoming online Zoom class on Wednesday, March 23rd, starting at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. If you want to join us for that, you can sign up for that on my website. There'll be details in the comments section here. But anyway, back to the topic this week, Monday's Mushrooms, episode 7, Mushrooms and Gout. In case you don't know, gout is a form of arthritis, and it impacts joints in the big toe and elsewhere in the body, but especially the big toe. And where it comes from is the accumulation of excessive levels of a molecule called uric acid in the body. So here's a chemical structure of uric acid for you chem nerds. So uric acid is a metabolic waste product that's normally cleared by the kidneys, but what can happen is when it's being produced in excess, due for instance to dietary factors as an example, or if it's accumulating because the kidneys are not doing their proper job at getting rid of it effectively enough, uric acid can actually precipitate in joints as very sharp crystals. So this is a light micrograph of uric acid crystals. Imagine a bunch of those in your big toe. And so it can, like I said, deposit in the big toe. So this photo on the left, I'm circling uric acid accumulation in a joint of the big toe, but it can also accumulate in other joints in the body, including the elbows. So what you're seeing on the left here is an image of some poor person who has a giant swelling. That is gout in their elbow. It can accumulate in other joints as well, the ankles and such, but it seems most often to hit people in the big toe. And I've had clients with this where they're debilitated. I had one young fellow in his 30s who had to use a crutch in order to be able to walk due to gout in his big toe. So this is a nasty form of arthritis. Now, it used to be thought that eating mushrooms was really bad for gout because they're moderately high in chemicals known as purines, and purines are a precursor in the body to uric acid. So it was thought that eating mushrooms was contraindicated with gout. But actually some recent research suggests that mushrooms and other non-animal foods that do in fact contain purines, legumes for instance, may be protective against gout, may actually lower the risk of gout. Now this doesn't mean you need to go out and eat a pound of mushrooms if you have gout. This is somewhat newer research, so take it easy, ease your way up, but the data is not what people used to think, that mushrooms were bad for gout. So, and going beyond that is the purpose of this little video, and that is that some mushrooms might actually have medicinal effects that pertain to gout. So one of them, and this is one that any of you who follow my channel know that I tend to talk a lot about, Ganoderma applanatum, or artist conch. This is a cousin to the more famous Ganoderma lucidum, or reishi, or ling-zhi. So here's Ganoderma applanatum. Here's a picture of one that I took in the San Juan Mountains of southwest Colorado. It's called artist conch, by the way, because you can draw on this white underside of the mushroom. If you look carefully, you may see an X kind of on the upper left part of this mushroom. That is from scratching the undersurface. When you do that, it turns brown. So people draw all kinds of things on this mushroom, and it's a great way to identify the mushroom. Regardless, so Ganoderma applanatum, or artist conch, has been used traditionally in Chinese medicine as a diuretic, as something that induces kidney function. It's a way to help the body get rid of wastes, and this mushroom has usage for gout. Now there's a Canadian herbalist and medicinal mushroom expert, Robert Rogers. He's written books on mushrooms. He cites his mentor Martin Osis, as using a decoction or a very strong tea of artist conch as a foot soak for the pain associated with gout in one's big toe. Now, I've not tried this yet, but the next time I encounter somebody in my practice who has gout, we are going to give it a try because I have this mushroom in stock. Now, anti-inflammatory properties of this mushroom, of Ganoderma applanatum, have been confirmed in lab studies. And in fact, there are even preclinical studies in rodent models showing that various extracts of artist conch can reduce induced uric acid excess in these rodents. And both water and alcohol fractions of the mushroom were active, and there appeared to be different mechanisms at play. So one of the mechanisms that seemed to be protecting the rodents from what's known as hyperuricemia, or uric acid excess, was the inhibition of uric acid production, meaning that mushroom alcohol or water extracts were able to block production of uric acid in the body. And what you're looking at here is just a slide representing how uric acid is made in the body. And don't go crazy trying to look at it, but it's basically the interaction of an enzyme, xanthine oxidase, and the molecule xanthine together with a purine, guanine. And this interaction here is where uric acid comes from in the body, or at least it's a major source of uric acid in the body. So one of the ways that these rodents were helped by the mushroom extract was by blockage in the production of uric acid. Now, the other way that uric acid levels were found to drop in response to Ganoderma applanatum or artist conch extracts in this rodent study was by increasing the excretion by the kidneys of uric acid. So the kidneys are one of the major ways, or the major way, we get rid of uric acid. They excrete it into the urine, and we get it out of the body. So here's a kidney getting rid of uric acid. Now, as a reminder, in traditional Chinese medicine, artist conch has been used as a diuretic, something that induces kidney function, kidney excretory functions. Now, this is not the only mushroom that has been found to be relevant to gout. Another one on the list is the stinkhorn mushroom, Phallus imputicus. And in terms of its botanical name, Phallus imputicus, it's pretty obvious when you look at the picture why it's been named this. And I'm not going to explain it. You can look it up. Stinkhorn is because it really stinks. There's a sticky mass of spores on the top of the mushroom, on the cap, after it emerges from its egg, and that attracts flies, which act basically as essentially pollinators. It carries the spore mass, the sticky gleba that coats the cap of the mushroom, off and spreads it around so that this fungus can spread and reproduce. Anyway, the immature form of the mushroom, the egg, the stinkhorn egg that I'm showing you here, is what has been used traditionally in Latvia for gout. And so this mushroom, despite how ugly it is, has a long history of use in medicine. And so, like I said, in Latvia, this has been used as a folk remedy for gout. It's been used in Europe as a folk remedy for kidney ailments. In traditional Chinese medicine, it's been soaked in alcohol and used for rheumatism, which is an old-fashioned name for painful, inflamed joints, pain, inflammation in the muscles and in the fibrous tissue. And while I haven't seen any studies actually looking at using this mushroom for gout, there are preclinical studies showing modulation of various inflammatory pathways. And so there you go, the stinkhorn mushroom. Next on the list is a mushroom called Phelinus ignarius, the willow bracket fungus. And this is one that grows on willow, as its name implies. This is a conch, or a hard woody mushroom. So this one, willow bracket fungus, is highly valued in parts of the world, especially Asia, as medicine. And rodent studies have actually found that extracts of this mushroom can help clear gout symptoms. So rodent models of gout, so there's decreased markers of inflammation, decreased joint swelling in these models. Studies in vitro, basically in like a test tube and cell culture and stuff, have found that extracts from this mushroom inhibit an enzyme known as xanthine oxidase, which is responsible in large part for the production of uric acid in the body. Now, it's interesting because this study actually looked at not only at wild harvested willow bracket, but also cultivated strains of willow bracket. And they were interested in that because this is such a highly valued medicine. There is worry of it starting to disappear in the wild. So even cultivated versions of willow bracket had similar activity in this rodent study of gout. Now, another mushroom that's interesting in this regard is lion's mane mushroom. Here's one that I'm growing from a kit. So Hericium erinaceus. And it's not so much that this has been looked at for gout specifically, but there was a study that came out, a very small study, in healthy human adults looking at metabolic effects. And one of the effects that they looked at was serum uric acid levels, how much uric acid is floating around in the body. And after just 7 days of taking dried mushroom powder of lion's mane, specifically from a liquid culture of lion's mane, uric acid levels actually went down to some extent. Statistically significantly, they didn't plummet, but they actually did go down. So that's interesting, and I'd be curious what happened if these folks were followed out longer term. I'd be curious what would happen with the fruiting body itself, whether uric acid levels would go down even more. But something to think about in the world of gout. Now, there have been other mushrooms as well that have been found to have xanthine oxidase inhibitors in them. So chemicals that inhibit the production of uric acid. One is Agaricus bisporus, the ubiquitous button mushroom that we're all familiar with from the grocery store. Multiple other Agaricus species as well, including Agaricus brasiliensis, have been found to reduce uric acid production by inhibiting the enzyme xanthine oxidase. Now this again is in vitro. It doesn't necessarily mean that this translates into what happens in a person, right? Cell culture and test tube studies need to be taken with a big grain of salt. But regardless, there are already a bunch of nutraceutical pills out there based on this research in button mushrooms and other Agaricus species that are being sold. And whether or not they're actually doing anything in a person, I have no idea. Another mushroom that has been found to inhibit xanthine oxidase and therefore inhibit uric acid production is Pleurotus austriatus, the oyster mushroom, which is a delicious wild mushroom. You can also grow it in a kit. So this water extracts of this mushroom, crude extracts, were found to, again, in vitro, inhibit uric acid production. And the researchers looking at this isolated a small tripeptide molecule that appeared to be at least partly responsible for this activity. Now, oyster mushroom, or Pleurotus austriatus, is not the only pleurotus mushroom showing activity that inhibits xanthine oxidase. A number of other pleurotus species do as well. So, this idea that mushrooms are bad for gout really needs to be re-examined. Before I finish, there's an interesting twist to this story. There is a plant that I really love. I have it in my practice called Guduchi, or Tinospora cordifolia. This is a highly valued plant in Ayurvedic medicine, one of the most ancient forms of medicine on the planet. So traditionally speaking, this plant is used for kidney health. It's been used as a gentle diuretic for many centuries, for urinary tract disorders, and for gout, one of the uses we learned about in herb school. And in fact, alcohol extracts of this plant to kind of look at tradition in the lab were used again in rodent models of uric acid excess. Nobody asks the poor rodents permission to do this, but regardless, the plant tincture significantly lowered serum uric acid levels in these rodents that had uric acid excess. And so what was floating around in their bloodstream was lowered, and they increased excretion of uric acid in the urine was also found in response to being given tinctures of this plant. And a really cool study that came out even more recently found that at least some of this uric acid effect, this uric acid depleting effect, is due to fungi that live inside of the plant. So I'm not that far off of what I'm talking about here in terms of fungi. So there were 7 fungal endophytes. Endophytes means inside of plants. So 7 fungi that were isolated from the plant that had activity that inhibited xanthine oxidase. Sorry, my brain's not great today. And so a couple of these fungal isolates were as strong as the drug allopurinol at inhibiting this uric acid producing enzyme. And allopurinol is used by doctors to treat patients who have gout. So this is really cool. At least some of Guducci's activity in terms of its traditional usage for gout might come not from the plant, but from the fungi that live inside of it, or at least maybe comes partly from the fungi that live inside of it. So super cool in my brain. Anyway, there you have it. Thanks for watching. As usual, if you have any comments or questions, any experiences along the lines of today's topic, feel free to share in the comment section. I look at them all and reply to them all. And don't forget to check out the upcoming gout class, Natural Approaches to Gout, coming up on the 23rd of March, 2022. Take care, y'all.